Welcome to De-Stress Your Business, the podcast where we show you how to get incredible results in your business without constant stress. I'm Alexis Kingsbury, a serial entrepreneur and founder at AirManual, and I'm joined by my co-founder and co-host Paddy Mann. Hi there, Paddy.
Good morning.
Now, employee onboarding is all about getting new team members up to full speed. And when done well, you can end up with employees who are highly motivated and productive, helping your team to achieve more and with less stress. When done badly, which is so often the case, you'll end up actually slowing the team down for weeks or even months with high levels of stress for everyone involved. There are two key parts to the employee onboarding journey: company onboarding and role onboarding. Today, we're going to look at company onboarding and the essential steps you need to include to help your new employees get off to a flying start. So, Paddy, let's start with a bit of a reminder of what are the goals for employee onboarding and particularly how company onboarding can support these goals.
Cool. Okay, so we set there's 3 goals for your employee onboarding overall. The first goal is to quickly get the new joiner feeling welcome, supported, and productive. They can often come in feeling anxious. They're worried about how they're going to fit in. They're worried about whether they're going to be able to do a good job and how they're going to be supported. So as soon as possible, we want to put them at ease, and make them feel welcome, know that they've got a great team around, make them feel supported, know that they're going to get the help they need when they need it, and get them to the point where they feel productive and feel confident that they're actually going to be value adding to the organization. The second one is to get them happy and confident in all areas of their role so that they can deliver consistent results without support. And this is all getting to the point where they don't need to constantly ask questions and they're not making regular mistakes and they're able to make good decisions. And it's an area where so many companies fall short. They focus on the first few hours or days or weeks, but forget about that longer journey. And then the third goal is to make great use of everyone's time. So we want the new joiner to get up to speed quickly, but we also want to do that without completely derailing the manager or the team or the HR department or any other team in needing to support the employee and handhold them every step of the way. So those are our 3 goals. And if we kind of go, okay, we've got this split. We've got company onboarding on one side, and then you've got role onboarding. And in most organizations, it's kind of the HR department that will take responsibility for the company onboarding. And then it would need to be handed over to the team, the manager and teammates to do the role onboarding. So what are the goals specifically for the company onboarding? Well, the company onboarding still needs to be thinking about the long-term goals. So still need to be thinking about getting the new joiner to the point where they can be productive in every area. But then they need to work out what are the things that this employee needs to achieve those goals, which are true for everyone in the organization. There's going to be lots of it. In fact, most of the learning is going to be very role specific, but there is a big chunk, and it's certainly something that will take up numerous hours, if not days, to get that full picture of the things which are in common. And so what's common for everyone? Well, firstly, everyone needs to be made to feel very welcome at the very start of the organization. And while there are things that need to happen from the team, it doesn't work if the company makes them feel welcome, but their manager ignores them. There are certainly there's a lot of things that can be done at the company level to make them feel welcome and supported. The company can make them feel supported in terms of the HR department and the executives, the CEO all being there and demonstrating that it's not just their manager who's going to be there and providing help. That's fantastic. And we can be giving them as a company the broader knowledge they need to be productive. So you're going to need lots of role-specific stuff, like all the specialist skills in sales or development or marketing or whatever. But you're also going to need some kind of ground context about what's the company as a whole trying to do. What are the broader goals? What's the situation with how we support customers and our industry and so on? In this context, it doesn't matter what department you're in. It's actually really important, and it's essential for you to be able to make decisions in your area, but also to be able to collaborate with other people and understand how your goals, what you're doing in your team, fits together with others. So essentially, company onboarding is about looking. We've still got those same long-term goals, but looking at the bits. What's the shared learning that applies to everyone that can be done really effectively, and sometimes it essentially needs to happen outside of the team in order to demonstrate that kind of wider support and a network.
Yeah, indeed. And I think it's funny. Last week I was talking to a business owner who's becoming a new client of ours, who, in their case, he actually owns a group of three businesses that he's acquired. And what's interesting there is that was one of the first conversations I think I've had where you suddenly go, ooh, actually, for that person, I think they need group level onboarding, then company level onboarding, and then role level, because in their case, it is useful that someone who joins, let's say, subsidiary or company A, they are going to need to know some basic things about the group level. That, what is the larger group? Why are we part of that? What's our, who are companies B and C? What's our relationship to them, and so on. And having that at the top level makes sense to have that consistent across all the others. And then when you then go into company A onboarding, it can then be more specific about what are the specific products and services that we offer and our geographies and so on. And it might refer then to as part of the wider group or to companies B and C, but it allows you to kind of go another level of detail. And then, as you say, then within that, you've then got role onboarding within that company that covers that. And I think breaking it down like that makes it a lot easier to identify what are the things that everyone needs to know if they're joining, let's say, the group. Everyone needs to know if they're joining the company, and then in that specific role, what do people need to know, so that you don't try and do one size fits all the way through, or indeed end up with, essentially onboarding guidance checklists that are literally like reinventing the wheel every single time, and so on. So I think it's powerful splitting it out like that. If we look at that sort of top level onboarding before we get into role onboarding and so on, like that company level onboarding, what are the kind of stresses that this solves? When we talk about de-stressing your business, what is it that the company onboarding does to reduce some of the stress?
Good question. If we want to know what stress the company onboarding solves, then I guess we can look at what happens when you have got good role onboarding, but you've skipped the company onboarding. So sometimes you come in and you've got a great manager and they get you up to speed and they take you on all the areas. And sometimes if there isn't great company onboarding, one of the things you'll start to see is the better teams will start to work out what should have been in there. And some of it will then come in with that role onboarding. So the manager will take it upon themselves to add in some of the context around the company vision and goals and who to talk to and about certain problems. But it gets a bit messy because different teams are doing different things. But essentially, what you get is there's gaps, because company onboarding isn't something you can cover in a half an hour section of that first meeting with your manager, and your manager is going to be keen to get you productive on the role stuff. But so that's what's going to happen. They're going to try and squeeze it down into a little bit of information, just enough to kind of give you some feeling of where you sit, but you're gonna lack a lot, and so you're gonna you might have a view of some of the long-term goals, but you're not really gonna have you might not have a really crisp clarity on what the current goals are, how your team goals supporting it, and then the goals that you are then assigned personally support the bigger picture. And without that, you're going to get what so often happens is it's kind of 6 weeks down the line, 3 months down the line, a year down the line, you have this realization and you go, crap. Because not having that piece of information has led you to make so many decisions and spend weeks or months on a project which felt like it was important, and it made complete sense based on the context you did have, based on your past experience, based on best practices online, but you were missing some piece of the puzzle. And it might be around the goals, or it might be about understanding how your sales team sells, or it might be about getting a grasp on your competitors and where your key USPs are against those. And so you get these, and it can be an individual level, you get these kind of gaps which lead to massive wasted effort and just basically bad decisions. But often, because it's not just one person who hasn't had it, it's a whole team who hasn't had this onboarding. You get whole teams that are veering off and going in the wrong direction because they haven't got this grounding, they haven't got this context and shared agreement on this is how we're doing things and why. And in the absence of it, they will try and fill in that knowledge themselves. And by filling in that knowledge, they're forming their own opinions, communicating it to each other and reinforcing it. And of course, what does that lead to? It leads to silos. It leads to conflict. It leads to incredible amounts of wasted effort, not just in going in the wrong direction, but in the trying to collaborate when you've got two teams working in different angles. And it's so clear when it happens at the enterprise level, but it's also something that can happen even if you've got two people in two different departments in a 5-person company. It's the small gaps in knowledge kind of grow exponentially, grow organically, and it can be within one person, it can grow to a team. But the stress, just take your imagination down any of those avenues and it can be immense.
Yeah, no, I think it's almost can create quite a bit of social stress, right? If you're at something that's a cross-department event and realizing as someone perhaps who joined the company 3 months, 6 months, 12 months ago, realizing I don't know who these people are, what functions they're in, or I've met someone who's in sales or in finance or whatever. I don't really know what their scope is, how big the department is, or anything or meeting someone senior in the business and not realizing who they are and so on, or being asked by a client when in a pitch meeting, how long's the company been? Is this a new company, old company? And you realize you have no idea. And it's that social stress related to things that seemingly should be basic knowledge of working in an organization, which are so easy to miss if you don't have a well-documented company onboarding process, because of course it can become assumed knowledge. The manager might assume, you've probably covered this, HR's probably covered this with you, or you've seen it on a website or whatever, might not even be on the website, and then 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, you're almost in a position where it's too awkward to ask, and say, sorry, just to check, John, carries himself around with quite a bit of weight and gravitas. Is he the COO? Having to ask those things can be really, really uncomfortable, and particularly the more junior in the organization you go. But of course, as you say, it grows over time. You end up with a situation where that junior staff member who never addressed that gap in knowledge then becomes a team leader or a manager, and sure enough, they're asked by their employees, what's the situation here? And that team leader or manager is too embarrassed to even admit they don't know and have found out. And it's things like that, and it also creates the discomfort around company-wide processes, right? How do I request holiday? How do I, request? How do I submit expenses? All those sorts of things. Which again, the risk is that you end up with those silos where they assume this, it's drop balls. They assume that someone else has covered it. So I think you're right in terms of each one of those. If you follow it down a conclusion, can create a lot of stress. So. Before we go into what company onboarding should have in it and the essential pieces, where do we draw the line between company and role onboarding? We've kind of alluded to a few sort of principles of that, but let's look practically. What does that look like? Where do you draw that line, and where's the handover?
It's a good question. There can be a lot of confusion here, and I think when there is confusion, it's more that the two teams, you've got the HR team and the different teams that are doing their role onboarding, is that they haven't acknowledged that they are doing their two different things. One's doing company onboarding, role onboarding, and they haven't acknowledged that essentially they're going to take responsibility for those areas. And until there's this kind of agreement within a company of, okay, HR is going to be responsible for company onboarding, and that means any kind of knowledge which we need every employee to know is going to be part of that. And then you are responsible for the stuff which is very specific to your department, to your team. Once you've got that kind of clarity, then it is not really that difficult to work out which should go into which. But you need to be able to go as a team lead and go, I'm seeing there's a big gap here. I need the sales team to know about our competitors. And then you go, well, wait a minute, is that maybe that's something that only the sales team need to know, or maybe wouldn't they need that in product as well, because they're going to be designing stuff against our competitors? And then you need to have that discussion. And the answer, well, we would say that there's certainly going to be something which is for everyone in the company. And so you probably need to have a little conversation there and go, talk to the HR and go, how far we think there's something that should be there. It's important for everyone. So how far are you going to take that? And is there anything that we then need to add to take it into more detail? So it's about making you clear on those accountabilities. Who's responsible for each area, and then opening up the waves to while you are feeling it through, while you're putting the company onboarding in the first place. But then one thing that you want to avoid is getting into a position where you go, HR's not got something right now, so I'm just going to build it straight into my own onboarding. Because once you do, you're going to get frustrated that they are then replicating stuff that you've got, but it's not quite to the same standard or to your liking. So when, if there is a gap in your company onboarding, then I would almost have that as a kind of before I start my own role onboarding, I'm just going to cover a few things which are going to be in company onboarding in future, and keep it separate rather than kind of integrating it deeply into your own onboarding. Otherwise, you get this kind of conflict.
Yeah, indeed. And I think the important part there is having that conversation, being able to discuss it with HR or whoever's responsible for that top level company onboarding. In small companies, it might just be, the business owner or whatever, and say, here's the things that I think my team need to know, but I suspect that other team members need to as well, and therefore doing it. And of course, there are layers of the detail, right? Like if you take understanding competitors, for a salesperson, it is useful for them to have a very deep understanding of direct competitors and how your products and services compare to theirs, which are the areas that actually the competitors are better fit for, which are the areas that we're a stronger fit for, how do you describe that to the customer, and so on. Now, does the finance person need that? No. But do they need to understand the wider industry that we're in and the names of some of the competitors? Yes, because again, partly social stress. It's very weird if they're in the company after a few months or years and they can't quickly list a few competitors. But secondly, it helps them add more value. It helps them be able to look at, well, if those are our competitors with my finance hat on, let me see how we measure up and how we compare. Well, how does our pricing compare? Let me have a look at them on the company's house and look at them in terms of value and so on. Or if you're in HR, then you need to know it in terms of how you measure up when you're trying to recruit and how you'd compare in terms of your employer brand and so on. So, it is layered, isn't it? It's not just, competitors, that's one or the other. It's layered knowledge of saying, to what extent does that need to be for everyone versus the role. So I really like that as an approach. One of the challenges, I think, for a lot of people is, okay, I get this layered. I get that I need to have some information for everyone, but what sorts of things should be in there? Because so often it's, and we learned it ourselves. Like it was an iterative process of us going, we think this should be in the company onboarding. And then you get your first hire or a few hires later, you go, you know what, we should have included, for example, our USPs or we should be getting everyone to have a quick look at some of the reviews about our company so they get a sense of what customers say about us. So what are some of the absolute essential steps that you'd list out and include in company onboarding?
Cool. Well, this is definitely an area that we've iterated on many times, and the kind of the process has grown and shrunk and grown and shrunk as we've worked out, okay, actually these things are related and this is where it sits. But we now have I'd say, pretty good clarity on both the company and role onboarding of some, I'd say, specific kind of sections, some kind of key groups of knowledge or activity which need to happen every time for every company, for every team. And so for the company onboarding, we've got five key sections where I'd say pretty much all the other stuff will fit into one of these 5 areas. And so you can start with the core stuff, which is obvious, and then over time when you spot there should have been something else, you'll be able to go, okay, it fits into one of these groups. The first one is meeting the team, and this is about working out who are the key people that everyone on the company should meet. And it may be a specific person, or it may be someone in a role. So their manager, of course. We like to give them a buddy who's going to help them during that onboarding experience. And it's typically someone at their own kind of level in the company and has recently gone through onboarding themselves. The HR team, so they're able to get support in that way. But there may be other key people that you want to make everyone aware of. It may be the CEO, it may be the entire executive team. But within this group, meeting the team, it's about identifying making sure he knows who they are, and finding a way to start building a relationship, because it's building those relationships really early on. Just being able to say hello gives you a chance to then say hello again when you've got a question in future and you're struggling in some deep problem around how does this work with finance. You're like, oh, wait a minute, I recognize Jeff, the head of finance, because I met him on my first day. That initial building that relationship, and then even better, getting opportunities to go for a coffee and really start to know people makes a huge difference. It's a huge lever to pull. So many companies talk about, we come from management consultancies, and it's all about networking. And it sounds like this fake, horrible thing which only people with funny hats would ever do. But what it really means is building relationships with people, and building relationships is about not just going to them and start talking work. What have you done? What are your results? How are you going to do? What's your, it's about caring about other humans and finding out a little bit more about them, who they are as a person, what they like to do outside of work, whether they've got a family, and so on. And it's actually when you get one of those little connections which is outside of work so often, that you then have a easy way to approach them again in future and talk to them about the football, the wife, the whatever. So first one, meeting the team and starting to build relationships with key people. That's essential. And who those people are, what roles they are, will depend a huge amount on your organization, but there will be something there. At the very core, it's going to be the manager, the buddy, knowing where the team is, knowing how to get support from HR. Second one would be setting up tools. There are going to be a range of tools which are company for everyone in the company. Well, or a big chunk of people, to the point that it's worth doing in the company onboarding. So you might have some people who do work in very different areas, but there are going to be some areas which it's not just in certain teams, it's for a big chunk of the company workforce. So we can include it in, whether it's setting up with a laptop or doing data security training and setting up those tools, or setting up their email. It's the foundations that are definitely across team, across department, that we want to do at that broader level. Then we've got, so those are the first two. We've got team and tools. And then we've got 3 different areas where we want to give employees context to help them understand where they sit in the organization and help them to make better decisions as they go along. The first one is looking at vision, values, and goals to help them go, this is where we are directing as a company right now, so you can understand why you're doing things, how it all stacks up, but also get a picture of, this is how we set the vision, values, and goals. So this is how it's going to adapt and change over time. Is it a quarterly exec meeting or whatever? How do the different teams factor in? If you see an opportunity and you think something should be a goal in future, how would that actually make its way up to the top? What are those mechanisms? So vision, value, and goals, absolutely, critical foundations. The fourth group is about collaboration. It's about working together and getting support, or how to work together and get support. And this is quite broad, but some of the key areas we'd have here is accountabilities, or who in the organization is accountable for what. So who is it? if you've got a finance question, where does that go? Where's the head of finance? Where's the head of marketing? Where do their team sit? How does that responsibility chain look? We use something called an accountability chart, which is like an organization chart, but it makes it very clear who's accountable for each department. But however you do it, just making it clear so when you've got a question as an employee, you know who in the organization is fundamentally responsible for that area. You need to know what the processes are. So where do I look to if I've got HR processes about taking leave? Where do I look about if I've got a security issue? Is there a standard process for raising that? What are all the other processes that exist within the organization where there's a standard way where the organization wants you to do something? How do I work out what those processes are? Where do I look? And so making someone aware of those and what the key ones are. And then there's performance. So how are you going to be supported as an employee with your personal development? How are you going to be assessed on your performance? How are we going to help you support your growth and your career development? What are the options for being promoted in future? How would that all work? And then there's the other collaboration areas of kind of what meetings exist, how do teams interact, and all that other kind of core information, so that someone knows if they need to collaborate in any way with someone else in the organization, whether to share an idea or ask about another team or to find out what the goals are. How does that work? That's this core area. So we've got meeting the team, setting up tools, vision, value, and goals, then learning how to work together and get support. And then the final area is learning how the business works. So how does the business fundamentally make money, stay afloat, stay alive? And you've got some core topics on there. It's like, what's our target market? What products do we have and sell? What services do we offer? Who are our competitors and how do we differentiate? Who are our customers and which ones are our key customers? And what customer stories do we have which kind of bring it to life and really demonstrate the value that we can provide to our customers when we do it really, really well? So yeah, five core areas: team, tools, vision, value, and goals, how to work together and get support, and how the business works in its industry, in its marketplace. And none of it needs to take particularly long, but there's none of that. None of that can be skipped, or you're going to have these gaps that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, I completely agree. And because that structure is something that, only yesterday I was talking to the owner of a IT service provider company, and where they felt they had got a really good recruitment process, but that when the person then joins at the end of it, the onboarding experience didn't live up to the dream that they were sold through the recruitment process, and as a result they had people who essentially were leaving after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and I believe and based on what they were sharing, like, a lot of that is down to missing some of these things, right? Tapping into that bigger why, creating that sense of connection with the rest of the team, because if you don't do that early on, you do start to lose the opportunity to do it. And when some business owners and leaders talk about people, they just treat it as, it's just a job, they're just here for the money, and if someone offers some more money, then they go. Like, that isn't a situation you should be tolerating. You should be able to create an environment and a role and a culture of people that want to stay, not because of the money, like that's a hygiene factor of a requirement of having a job, but because they feel commitment to the greater vision, the purpose. They feel a connection to the values, that they've connected and feel loyal to that team and feel like they're welcome and supported and so on. And then, as you say, that they have a good understanding of how the business works, how it grows, how it makes money, how they can contribute and so on, so that they really want to stay. So I love that structure. And note that if you're thinking, well, there's a lot there, how will I remember to do this? I feel like I should be immediately taking notes. Good news, we've got this structure as a template that you can use as a starting point, available for anyone using AirManual. You can just click on the little help button, the question mark, and go to examples and templates, and you can find it in the onboarding area. But otherwise, if you want access to that, just reach out, give us a shout. You can email us support@airmanual.co, or you could reply on some of our social media posts, and we can share some of those things, because ultimately that'll give you a much better starting point than trying to start from a blank page, which is scary and risks moving loads of stuff, right, Paddy?
Absolutely is, and one of the biggest challenges that we have when we've got new customers coming in, they're looking at onboarding, and often they're looking at it knowing there's only a few weeks until someone joins, is the scope of what someone needs to know is big. I mean, there's a lot of areas. I've covered 5 groupings, but within each of those sections are key areas. But once you get that structure and work out where everything fits together, it starts being so scary. And initially, you don't need to create content that explains every single thing. You just need a placeholder so that at the very least someone will be able to describe it the first time, and then the next time you can look to systemize it. Something I just wanted to chuck in, because I think I undersold it. I was taking you through the 5 sections, but almost sold it as this is something that you kind of get through and make sure that they've learned all these areas. It's not just learning, it is getting the new employee excited about all of these things. Maybe not that excited about setting up tools. They do have to get through that one. Mm-hmm. So you make it as quick and easy as possible, but getting really excited about your vision, value, and goals, getting really excited about the cool ways that you can collaborate and the way they're going to be supported, getting excited about where, the unique ways that you serve the marketplace, because this is part of what they're looking for in their job. They're looking for purpose. They're looking for something which makes them feel like they are helping the wider world and community. They're looking for stories which they can share with their friends and family that help to make them feel assured that they are, doing a great thing. And this is what you can give them. You can give them this moment of excitement and motivation, so they come out of this first moment, this company onboarding, feeling properly pumped about what you as a company do, and absolutely ready to go flying into their role onboarding, which is what comes next.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a good point around creating that excitement and that energy around it. Thank you for sharing that. Now, for those that have been listening to a few of these episodes, you'll know that we run a weekly webinar which covers onboarding as part of a wider topic in which we talk about how to free up 15 hours per week and remove the constant stress of running a business without slowing down growth, which onboarding is a key part of. And in that webinar, we'll show you exactly how to use it to achieve those goals. It's typically every Wednesday at 1 p.m. UK time. The next one is next coming Wednesday. You can find out more and register at www.airmanual.co/webinar. Final note for our podcast listeners, as a new podcast, we do need your help. If you found the content today valuable, please take 1 minute to leave an honest review. If you're listening on social media or watching it there, please do share it with other people. Really, really appreciate it. That will help get the podcast more visibility and help more people. But otherwise, until next time, have fun.